last thing while Oleg brings his slides up. If this room is getting too packed, we have a little bit of overflow seating in a secondary conference room in the back. Oleg will be casting his slides as well as his video, so you can hop on from there. Although I kind of like the cozy feeling that we've got going on in here. But I wanted to offer in case anyone's getting a little hot. We've got a second room in the back. But with that, I will turn it over to Oleg.
Thank you so much, Samir. So, thank you guys for being here. Samir set the stage. Definitely, let's try to keep this conversational. This is not like I just gonna present. I wanted to make sure that we keep it kind of casual and more like we're in this, fireside chat group and that we can discuss things. So, I'm a co-founder of BZ AI. We build an orchestration hub for software development, and I'll talk to more about it at the end. Also, I'm a VP of partnership at Honeycomb Software. I'm a founder of Rocket Network. Rocket Network is a newsletter, your go-to source for all things innovation in Houston, and Honeycomb Software is a software development company, one of the best in Houston. But you can connect with me by scanning QR code. So the guys at AITX asked me, they're like, hey, you went to GTC, why don't, before we jump into skills, let's talk a little bit about, what are your takeaways, right, from the GTC. So I can go over them really briefly. So we have shift to inference, token economics, AI factories, and next generation hardware, and of course, NemoClaw. Am I sharing?
Let me unmute this.
Yes.
All right.
All right, cool.
Yeah, perfect.
So let's start with the first one, right? So there is a huge shift right now that's happening in the market. So essentially, we're moving away from training into inference. Who understands kind of what that means? You do, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, for those who doesn't, we're no longer, like the data centers that have been built, no longer using the compute to train the models, but they're actually, are use cases like, hey, we're chatting right now with AI, or you generating images. So the big shift that actually happens is inference happen constantly. And every conversation, code execution or agent discussions, it actually triggers the inference. And so Jensen declared that while training dominated the early AI boom, we hit the point where inference now creates the majority of the compute demand and revenue. So the next one was kind of huge. So we entered this new economy. They called it tokenomics. So Jensen Huang, the CEO and founder of NVIDIA, he called tokens is the new commodity. That was like one of the big takeaways. So he compared it to oil. So he said that the tokens must be measurable, priced, and traded. So just along from that, we're going to see the new economy, new startups are going to be created, But yeah, he defined it and compared it to essentially oil. So essentially companies will be users and token manufacturers for their customers. It's already started with the large startups that are, fine-tuning their own models, like maybe you guys who uses Cursor. Yep. So basically they started as a wrapper for models, right? But now they realize that, the biggest opportunity actually lies in training their own models. There was also like a big conversation about being able to it's not going to be vertically integrated models versus horizontally integrated models. He said that successful companies will be able to use both in conjunction. So essentially, how do you get, maybe you can use Anthropic and OpenAI for horizontal use cases, but we'll see more and more folks fine-tuning their models to their specific domain and then building companies around that. And also we'll be manufacturing and selling tokens as companies to our customers. We're no longer going to be selling the actual, software and features. We're going to be selling AI outcomes and tokens. That's where the new economy is heading. So actually, just overall, I kind of jumped straight in, but overall was really excited. It was like, I don't know, has anybody attended GTC before? Definitely recommend. So like 30,000 people this year. But you run into folks like, I've met a co-founder of Mistral, just run into him and start talking, and I found out hey, this guy is, a billionaire, I don't know, created a huge company. And really like you can meet like top 1% of folks who are actually building. And one of the big realizations as well was, realizing like you can watch videos online or seeing LinkedIn posts, but being there and realizing that it takes entire ecosystem that has to come together to create this. Like we talked to folks that are building data centers in Norway and using some like cool like a lake to cool their data centers. We talk to the manufacturers that are making like photonics. It just like opens up your horizons essentially. Once you start to understand how everything is interconnected, and there's many opportunities actually in like picks and shallows of AI, because we're talking like about end users of like software, right? But there is a lot of opportunities actually in picks and shallow industry of like how do you actually the whole supply chain that it takes to create AI, right? Like from the hardware standpoint. So next one is AI factories. So we're officially moving from the era of software to the era of AI factory. So they start calling also the data centers. They call them AI factories, and it creates infrastructure for productivity. So power plus compute equals usable tokens. And some of the new thing that's happening in the market is essentially Jensen say that in the future engineers and employees in general will have tokens budget, and that's already I saw posts online becoming the new normal in Silicon Valley. So you will be let's say you want to work for a startup, you'll be offered a salary, bonuses, equity, and token budget, right? So you're gonna have to ask for a new thing like, well, how much am I gonna get this year in tokens? That's become like essentially a new perk for recruiters, like a force pillars and the new currency, right? But yeah, who knows? Like we know Elon Musk say that after AI factories are built, after the data centers are sold, we might have an electricity shortage. We'll see what happens in Houston. Maybe that will create some new opportunities around that. But a lot of value lies now in the infrastructure productivity, how efficient someone can produce tokens per watt, right? So like the reason why China is winning right now in some cases is they have really cheap access to electricity. But so what was promising around NVIDIA is they revealed new next generation hardware, right? So they showed their, it's called Vera Rubin. So it's designed to deliver 10 times more efficient performance per watt. So it doesn't take as much electricity for those specific chips. Also, they have a brand new CPU. NVIDIA used to never been in CPU. CPU was like an AMD that was doing CPUs. Now they entered the CPU market. They also acquired at the end of last year a company called Grok. I wish I invested. There was like an opening investment opportunity that I missed out on. But essentially this allows, something that he showed as well, some of these things that used to take a lot of cables to put together, it would take like up to, I don't know, few weeks, sometimes few weeks to put together. Now it takes a couple hours to connect them between each other. So that means they can build these data centers faster with this new style of hardware that they set up. And for the Grok, so they designed this ultra high speed inference. So we're not going to see almost any latency. Like how sometimes you're using GPT or Anthropic and you like it loads because there are a lot of people using it. So when the Grok is being used, it's going to be like almost instantaneous, like you have a server right here in your room with you. So that was something cool about Grok.
It's a piece of hardware for anyone wondering. He's not talking about XAI LLM. Yeah. It's a piece of hardware that's physically on the NVIDIA.
Yeah, it's a Grok with server. The Q, not the Grok.
Grok.
Yeah, thanks. That's a good catch and clarification. And the biggest one, that's why I kept it for the last. So NemoClaw was announced. So everybody, you guys hosted the thing meetups about OpenClaw already here. Which one of you attended? But essentially, Jensen compared OpenClaw moment to like a Windows moment. You know how we like all in 80s and 90s discover Windows? He's saying that OpenClaw, we all will have our own personal OpenClaws essentially, or in their case, when they sell to corporates, it's called NemoClaw. So NemoClaw, they use NVIDIA's technology called OpenShell, and they're able to make it secure, and offer it to enterprises, because security gaps and like not having enough governance. This has been some of the biggest essentially issues with OpenClaw. So they decided to solve this, and the whole moment of NemoClaw or OpenClaw being announced. So OpenClaw got like the most stars on the GitHub. I don't know if you guys saw this. Since they passed in like 2 weeks, they got more stars than what was the Linux. Yeah, they did like Linux. So, but yeah, the NemoClaw integration from NVIDIA actually provides safety guardrails, and it can run agents platforms for enterprise IT directly addressing the security risks. So. Okay, let's go next. And so for those of you that are in like IT or software development, because that's the industry that I'm in, and so those are some of the biggest takeaway, and I put them kind of in the slide. So essentially, well, I had AI do it for me. So essentially, so it used to be in an old IT model that the primary user of software was like individual human employee. In the OpenClaw era, you have the company using NVIDIA agents. And then output unit, used to be software features in the old IT. Now we're talking about intelligence and tokens. And then the billing model shifted from subscription and per seat to consumption and traffic. And then we have the interface instead of screen and dashboards. We now want to be able to go straight into Slack, into chat, or to any kind of chatbot where we're going to access this intelligence through. So pretty much software as we know it is dying, but the new things are created, so there's a lot of new opportunities around this. And so the strategic takeaway is that the next generation of enterprise value will come from producing and distributing useful automated decisions, not selling more seat or features. So what's next? I guess the biggest takeaway I want to leave you guys with for the NVIDIA is the output of the new economy is not software, it's tokens. So those who will be able to produce tokens cheaply and efficiently and resell them, sell them to the customers, become almost manufacture your own tokens, they're gonna win. Those companies are gonna win. So I would suggest if you thinking about it, start fine-tuning your own models if you're working on a startup. If you have ability to start fine-tuning your own models for your own domain, this is the future, and this is what we saw after talking to folks that we met at NVIDIA. Because if you just purely building features, there's no defensibility, there's no moat around it. So you need to start training your own models and creating proprietary data sets that you could use. So maybe let's pause there. Like, does anybody have questions about this NVIDIA conference or anything like that? Anything you guys want to discuss before we move on? Yes.
From your experience, was there something that you had any sort of personal pushback of like disagreeing with the trajectory that these big billionaire CEOs are going to tell us about? Where you were like disagreeing or like, no, I don't think that's true?
I don't think it's gonna happen as fast, right? Especially in the enterprise sometimes, right? It's like in some cases like shifting Titanic, like it takes a little while to get those companies there. So it's not gonna be like, for example, we come to these companies, like we were talking to startups, they're moving pretty quick.
Right.
You come to enterprise or mid-size, they have to deal with change management processes. We still have a couple of years, until that happens. But we should know what's going to, because like being in California, it's like, this is going to be in Houston maybe a few years from now. With AI, it's kind of sped up maybe, like maybe it's a few months it's going to be here. But yeah, I think they want to hype it up a little bit more than where things are right now. But you should be able to spot sometimes some signal from the noise, I think, right? So yeah, but yeah, so there were some. I don't know. I can't think of any like specific, I guess, over exaggerations, but they were for sure doing it because they ended. He wants to sell you the GPUs.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So,
yeah.
Of course, they're gonna overhype it. So, but yeah. So basically, if any of you want to follow along, so what we can do essentially. I created like 3 different skills, and one of them is actually will help you build your own go-to-market like advisor that you can use in your skills. So if you scan this QR code, it should take you to like a Google Drive where you can download it. And also, this is my QR code because I'll start sharing my Claude screen now. if you want to connect with me, if you want to get my email. So basically, you're able to just drag and drop and drop those skills into your Claude. You can either use a chat or you can use a co-work. Does anybody want to do it today, or should I just kind of show you what I did and you can do this? Yeah.
I'll do it today.
You'll do it today?
I'll
Cool.
try it.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. So if you once you if you downloaded the folder, you will find 3 different skills in there. So skills are basically automations that, for those of you who haven't heard about skills, that we can create by simply prompting Claude. So it sounds at first like, oh, skills is something like really complex. You can use Claude, talk about your use case, it will come up with suggestions, and instead of you prompting Claude over and over, you can just save those skills. You're also able to connect, they call it connectors. So if you go in Claude into here in the customize, and you have skills, right? So some of them already come pre-built with Claude, but you can make them better, right? So you can have a skills for marketing. In our case, we're talking about sales and go-to-market. You can have them for coding. You can have them for different use cases. So something that's important to know, you should be using a lot of connectors. And I will talk about a couple of different use cases that I created for myself that helped me. For example, I was just at South by Southwest and I was at NVIDIA conference, met many people. Usually when I meet somebody I screenshot their LinkedIn profile. So, but just before I jump to that, so did any of you already got the skill?
I don't have my laptop, so maybe.
Okay, I would say you can try them at home. I'll show
We
you.
can send it in the Luma chat.
Yeah, I can send you those slides or something like that.
But also, really
yeah.
quick with skills, just a quick analogy that if you guys have never used skills before, it's you can use it in Claude Desktop. If you want to think about it, if you've heard of MCP before, about these whole MCPs and everything, MCP is like, if you think of it in the kitchen, it's like a kitchen equipment, right? Skills is like a recipe. It's something that is repeatable, reusable. It's like a recipe book. It's like you're giving the agent or the Claude, in this case, a recipe book of how to do something and how to use certain skills. So it's something that Anthropic developed last year, I believe, and they open sourced how people use it. Now all these different agents, OpenAI, Anthropic, OpenClaw, they all use skills. So skills is modular, composable. You can use it with any sort of AI system that you want. They have the
Yeah, and
It's just a bunch of words.
yeah.
That's all. It's just a bunch of words.
But if you are using, so like for example, in my day to day, I use HubSpot, right, for my CRM. Does anybody uses HubSpot or Salesforce, right? So I don't need to even open my HubSpot. I connected my HubSpot via Claude, and now let's say I met somebody that I want to add to my CRM. I just dropped it in, and so the first one that I'll show you is essentially a skill that I built. So I was like tired of like adding these people that I met manually to HubSpot. Also, sometimes I don't have their email. Maybe I only have their LinkedIn, right? So my friend Gary here, he didn't know about this, but I screenshotted his LinkedIn profile, and I'm just gonna drop it in here. And how do you activate skill, right? So you click / button, and it pulls up some of the skills that I have in my essentially skill cabinet. So the one that I want to use for this is called GTM LinkedIn to CRM. So what I was gonna say, use this skill and add Gary to my CRM. Boom.
And Gary to my CRM.
Yep. So what's gonna happen on the background?
Why did you have to say Gary? You just dropped.
I didn't have to say Gary.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just saying add him to my CRM.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I know Gary.
Please.
So what are steps that are happening in here? So because I have it connected to my Apollo, so Apollo is the lead generation sales tool. So you can find people's emails, you can find their phone numbers, you can find different information about them. So it asks me, it has as a guardrail saying, hey, I'm going to use Apollo. Is you okay with this? I say yes. So now what it's doing on the back end, it goes into my Apollo that I don't have to open manually. Yes.
I was going to ask, is Apollo the only way that you get into
Nope.
solid LinkedIn data? Because I was trying to,
No,
Not- that's what
Apollo
they're
doesn't
trying to
have a
serve.
lot. You can have, there is a tool called Appify, and I
that's
use it.
actually what my code is an advocate of Appify. So there are LinkedIn scrapers that you can use through
Yeah, I
Appify.
just see which one y'all.
So the GTM engineer that I sent you, and so there is the tool that I sent you, the GTM engineer, is gonna ask you 11 questions about your business. Once you answer them, you can say, okay, I want to save you as a skill, and it's gonna know about which tools you're using, what's your business about, who's your ideal customer profile. So once you have that, it's gonna suggest for you connectors based on your business. So like I already did that for myself. So I use Apollo and HubSpot. So when I was creating this skill, I say I'm using those tools. It showed me how to connect them. All pretty simple, no coding required. You do it all in instructions. So
What's Apollo?
Apollo is essentially a lead enrichment tool. They have it's a go-to-market sales tool. So anyway, so let's see what happens here. So the data about Gary was enriched. Now it says, okay, I'll go ahead and create the content. I'll say yes, and now it's added to my HubSpot account, right? So what used to, I don't know, I would have to go to many different tools. Now it takes me a few seconds or a minute to do.
And one thing to know is I think Oleg in your skill you added guardrails of tell me when to proceed. If you don't want to have guardrails, if you feel more dangerous and just let Claude do it by itself, you can remove those because it's just natural language.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't see the text, but are you using Apollo's MCP or are you using
Yes.
API?
Yes, exactly. So if I'll go here to my connectors. So essentially, when you connect Apollo, HubSpot, Slack, I have Appify connected. It uses MCP connection. So in some cases, it will connect automatically to if you have the tool open. In some other cases, you might need to copy your like AP or like a token to connect them between each other. But essentially, this becomes like a new interface how we do anything. So another use case. So yeah,
Just a general question. If you drag a whole folder full of screenshots, would it
yeah, it would
know
work.
what to do? Or would
Exactly.
do them all individually?
Yes, I was doing that actually, yeah. Another one, I just started this one. So I could scrape, so my Claude knows who my ideal customer profile is, right? So it's engineering managers, CTOs for busy. So the one that I created, it's called LinkedIn Post Engager. So it uses Appify scraper that scrapes people's LinkedIn posts and profiles. And so what I'm gonna do here is I say, all right, use LinkedIn post scraper and find my ICP. So it's asking me, okay, well, he's looking on somebody's profile. It's saying, which post do you want me to scrape? I'll say, all right, we'll scrape, let's see, I'll just scrape this one so it'll be faster. With 43 likes. So it's gonna go into LinkedIn, look at all people who engaged with somebody's post. So it could be your competitor, it could be your client that you already have, then maybe you can ask for warm introductions. And so it's gonna try to match these people's personas against my ideal customer profile and give it to me in a priority list, like who should I engage with that could become my potential customer. So those steps manually could take you hours. So now I'm able to do it all in one interface. So you guys should think about yes.
Where is your ICP definition housed? Are they in the skill or are they elsewhere?
So it's in this. It's also saved in the skill. So the GTM engineer skill that I created. I'll show it to you guys as an example.
It just has the IC in the markdown, just the ICP.
So let me find it. I think I ran it as a test.
What's the difference about putting your ICP in the project instructions?
So it's similar to projects, right? The difference is when you're gonna work with the connectors, the project doesn't have the connectors, right? It's not gonna be so skills. You're able to use different connectors that you're using in your day-to-day, but the projects is more about storing only the context with information. So
also
and
with skills, you can like, let's say you don't want to use Claude, you want to go to OpenAI, or you've recently tried OpenClaw. You can move that skill directly, and as long as you have the connectors in those places, it'll do almost exactly what you would want it to do.
so this is the GTM engineer that I created, right? So you guys will get, if you do this at home and against your startup idea or company you're working on, you're gonna get this 11 questions, right? What's your industry? What's your size? Who's your ideal clients? What is your unfair advantage, right? What kind of tools are you using? How are you gonna access data? Once you answer those 11 questions, you can ask it to produce this document, and then you should save it in you can save it as a project as well if you want to, but you can save it as your skill as GTM engineer that you could use when you're building any kind of connectors. You can say, hey, you click slash and say, activate my GTM engineer and suggest based on the tools that I'm using in my business, what can I automate here, right? So you use it as instead of prompt. So this is the output that you're gonna get. So like you will get this document at the end of the day, talking about your unfair advantages, different patterns, things like that. So let me go back to the ICP. Yes.
Approximately, what does this cost? It's very affordable.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm using the $20 Claude plan.
All the
Amplify monthly subscription. It costs you about $30 a month, but they give you $5 a month of free credits, so you can try it for free with the $5 plan. If you go to Amplify, it's actually a pretty cool tool. So they have different scrapers, right? So you can scrape TikTok, like Instagram, YouTube, etc. So in my case, I'm using the scraper for LinkedIn. But yeah, like Michael, who's not here, he's the guy who you can reach out to about using Amplify, and I know they have some like a program for startup that gives you a discount.
Michael is one of the co-founders of AITX. He's based out of the Austin group. He's speaking at another event today, but he usually makes it down here for the monthly meetup. So you guys can probably catch him next month.
Is a follow more?
Is there a way you can prompt Claude to look at the skills that you've already been working on?
Yeah, so like if you've been prompting, like if you have some kind of repeatable prompts that you were doing over and over, that's kind of what skills are for. So you don't have to, go and like copy paste your prompt. You can literally just say, okay, you saw my workflow. Now I've saved this and create it as a skill. So that's kind of the goal behind the skills. And one thing we also didn't talk about when we talk about OpenClaw, there is a new feature in here. It's called Dispatch. Have you guys, anybody heard about Dispatch yet?
Yeah, it
So-
came out like a week ago. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's pretty new, right? So that's actually their competitor to OpenClaw. So what you're able to do is the dispatch. So let's say you have a machine at your house that you want to run the Claude on that never goes to sleep. Let's say you have some kind of files that are stored on that machine that you want to have access to. You can have your phone and text it from your phone or message Claude from your phone and say, hey, run this for me, access this folder, perform this action on my behalf. Essentially, it's like another version of OpenClaw that Anthropic entered the market and they started to compete with. But anyway, so yeah, I guess I will move to the next section unless somebody have other questions about the skill. Yeah.
What would you say is the most like mature skill, like what you spent the most time working on, and like what have been some things you learned after using it for a while of these three that you built, that you shared with us?
So some of the things, you have to really put like guardrails with like some prompts where you don't want it to perform certain things, like that's extra, right? Because sometimes if you didn't give enough in the prompt, like what not to do, it kind of randomly comes up with stuff. So you want to have in your prompt not only what to do, but also have it as like a guardrail. It's like, also it's like you're gonna save your talking to say, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. For example, I created one custom one for the Amplify. I say don't, because it could open up and use any of these connectors by itself.
Right.
So I say like I found like a cheaper LinkedIn scraper that only costs I don't know, it uses like less tokens, let's say. I say do not use that one ever. like that's expensive.
Yeah.
I put it as a guardrail,
Right.
and I found one that's like really cheap and does a good job. And I say always use that, you know. So like you can kind of play and try things of this nature.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's a big takeaway. But I think I'm only touching like a little bit. I'm still gonna sit down with my team and say, guys, what are you doing right now? Repeatable, like show me what's repeatable. We're gonna build you a skill for this, and we're gonna automate it because we'd rather pay $20 a month, or maybe some additional tokens. Maybe it's $40 or $50 a month, versus you spending, I don't know, maybe 8 hours, 10 hours a week on some repeatable task. So the difference right now, I think what's happening is, you know, what used to cost, you would have to hire a team and build this. Now you can basically map out some of your repeatable process yourself, use Claude to build your skill and automate your workflows, you know?
You can also chain skills together if you set up like your own little, it doesn't do it automatically out of the box, but I mean, you can also say at the end of a skill to use another skill afterwards. So you basically build like a flow chart of different instructions where each skill is just a set of instructions that takes you to the next set. So by automating little things at a time, you get all these pieces you can put together and you can create whole workflows out of it.
On long term, at least for my use case, long term context, what I had to do is reference particular brand voice over and over in each skill. Like, hey, make sure you reference this particular skill in brand voice to try to keep it and keep human in the loop, to try to like keep it through all the stuff I'm doing. Or else it'll do what you said. It'll go off of this, and you'll be like, "Dude, that's purple. The website was blue." Like,
and I'll talk to you a little bit about Busy and how we keep it human in the loop as well. In the, I guess the.
So one thing you can do for problems like that is on all these things, your agents.md or your Claude.md, this gets appended to the chat every time there's a new chat, right? So Claude sees all of the previous chat, right? And then it gets the system prompt and your Claude.md, and then it gets your last message, okay? So if you keep your Claude.md updated with these little things, it's always right there for it to remember, and it doesn't lose track of it. So you can have skills that literally update the Claude.md, or you can have folders that you work in. So like whenever it has to go into a folder, it'll load the Claude.md for that folder, and it will always be at the bottom of the context window so that it remembers to do it.
Yeah. Yes.
Regarding like automation and using Amplify to scrape TikTok, what are some of the capabilities using Amplify? Can it scrape, like, say, the format of the video, the call to actions, and also look at?
You can actually, I use the TikTok Amplify scraper, and you can actually download the videos. Not only that, but you can also get the likes and comments, at least up to a certain amount, I believe. And you can get some of the analytics of whatever the metadata is behind the video itself. And if you had like a skill to analyze the video itself, you could run Claude through that, say, okay, here's the video, here's the skill, analyze what I want in the video, and it can give you that output.
And it's only download the video and then scrape that, no URL?
So you have to remember, if you don't mind me jumping in real quick, so when it comes to Amplify, you have to remember that it's a bunch of people like us, right, who write these scripts for Amplify.
It's like a marketplace for
So
scripts.
there's one where there may be one TikTok scraper where you look at it and it does everything you want it to do, or it doesn't do enough. But then the next guy comes with free one, and that one does the video. So there may be times where, like you said, you may have to change some of those scrapers together.
Let's discuss TikTok. I search TikTok and it's just a wall.
You can also use Claude to make your own to do exactly what you do.
TikTok His bloody I'm guessing so. I've never
I also use anybody using like a note takers, like Honor, any.
I have a founder's journal.
Yeah. So you can connect your note taker as well. Depends like on your sensitivity if you're willing to share it with.
Granola has an MCP as well, so if you have Granola and you connect it to your Claude, you can be like, take my meeting notes that Granola was listening and transcribing, and then give it to Claude, and it'll understand.
I need to do something.
So I have 2 interns right now from Norway. They're attending Sarah Week right now. And so what's something that they built for themselves? They have a note taker going once the panel is going. Once it's in, they take the transcript, or I don't know if they connected it or they copied it. They take a screenshot or the picture of who's on the panel, and based on what they say, it tells them like, oh, here's the good question to ask, and also here's how we can ask them about busy, and who is based on these 5 people that's on the panel, you should definitely talk to John or to Michael, like based on like what was said, and based on what we're doing, you know? So there's like,
So
I don't know.
Does it have like a heat score?
So many, like
is it specific like that person has like a 90% buying single heat score or something like that? Like
You
So-
could make it output that if you want.
Yeah. that's
based on what you
saying.
prompt, right? I was doing the same thing when I was at South by Southwest. Like, you know, I just showed up to the panel and there was like a VP of technology for Cisco or something. I just took a screenshot of their names. I didn't have to open my LinkedIn. He went and ran it for me on the back end and said, definitely talk to Sarah because she's a VP of technology at Cisco. So you building orchestration for software development. I have 5 people. I need to decide like who do I want to try to catch one of the speakers. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna talk to Sarah first because she most likely to understand what we're building and busy. So anyway, with that, I'll transition quickly. How much time are we doing?
We're good. What else you got?
So I'll tell you guys what we're building in Busy quickly, right? So essentially, what is Busy, right? So we build an orchestration hub for software development with AI. So why Busy was born? So I worked for Honeycomb Software, which is a software consulting company. We had over 100 people, and everybody was adopting AI about a year and a half or almost 2 ago. And we have this problem where we're not able to track who's AI native in our company, who's using AI tool, who's not, how much are we spending in tokens, what tools should we be using, right? We had a lot of this kind of AI adoption gap. We found a few guys that were AI native and were crushing it, while we had another ones that maybe were resisting AI, were saying, it's not there yet, I'm still better, or maybe they didn't want to be replaced with AI. Then we had another use case where there was a guy in the office that was essentially, like it took him 2 weeks to install the tool, but now he had like 4 partners that he's playing ping pong with, right? So he uses this efficiency for himself. So one of the takeaways from GTC was as well is like, since we're entering the tokens economy, we should be able to track who's using it on your team, who's not. So we started with observability. So we track token costs, adoption rates, and productivity gains from AI in software development specifically. But how we do it? So we plug it into your existing tools like Slack, Jira, GitHub, give managers real analytics of how it has been used. And also, so we try to fix this large gap, especially for the large teams that are trying to adopt AI, because adopting AI on the team level is pretty easy. But if it comes to, on the individual level it's pretty easy, but when it comes to the team level, it's actually pretty hard. And we saw it firsthand. So here are the 3 main components of Busy, right? So first one is a smart ticket system. So what we do is we connect into your Jira or GitHub, and when the ticket is created, first step, we actually try to clarify what it is you're trying to do with AI. So we all heard of AI slop, right? Like that was a word of 2025. So, garbage in, garbage out, it still exists. So what we say, before feeding your request into the coding model, you need to first clarify what's happening. So once the ticket is clarified, then we can fire it up to our, what we call smart model routing optimizer. So based on the models that you bring into your model cabinet, we're gonna choose which model to route your request through. So if it's something complex, let's use, Opus 4.6. If it's something straightforward, let's use less expensive model.
Haiku. I do Haiku. If it's just simple reasoning, use Haiku. If it's advanced statistics and stuff, then go to Opus.
And for enterprises that have like a highly sensitive use cases, they are open to you. They want to be using locally hosted models like Mistral Dev or Quen. They want to be able to. They don't even want Anthropic or anybody to be able to train on their data. So we already have the setup, and that's one of our unfair advantage. Is we're able to host our platform on client side, and they could be using either hybrid models, so they can be using Anthropic and OpenAI, or we can help them self-host models and have the combination so they also don't spend as much on tokens. Right now we're doing it mostly for software development use cases, but who knows, in the future we might run into some other use cases. And so it takes only 20 minutes to set up, and we connect to most of the tools now. So Slack and Teams for communication, GitHub, Azure DevOps, Bitbucket, and GitLab. So some of those tools, and I could show you just very briefly how everything is working inside Busy, right? So this is the dashboard. By the way, developers, they don't ever even need to open Busy at all, because everything works inside of the tools that they're already using. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just copy this to make this faster. So when I open Jira and I create a ticket, let's see.
You said you got Teams integration now?
Oops. Sorry?
Teams integration now?
We have we have integration with Teams, so you're sending your commands within the Teams.
Perfect.
So so first of all, I have a like a sandbox application here that's invoice analytics application. So, and we have a bug here, right? So what I'm gonna do is say export export to Excel. When I look here, it looks like I have 10 invoices, right? But in reality, when I open this file,
you should open the per page like one.
Let's see. I have too many things now open on my laptop. Sorry. Anyway, so there is a bug here, and that I'm not going to do it because we don't have probably a lot of time, but I'll show you how the process looks like of how we could be solving this bug, right? Let me just make sure. So anyway, I'm going to say, currently there is an issue on the invoice page, and I'm just going to copy this in Jira. So let's see. So I'm going to put it in description. Hit save. So I'm going to assign it to myself, to Oleg, and I'm going to hit the label. So the label tells Busy where in my repo I want this agent to work, right? So I select agent worker. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to receive a Slack message saying, hey, Oleg, you've been assigned a task. So I received this message right here saying, hey, you've been assigned a task. And the first step that's happened, it's essentially an estimation. So Busy is going to score and give me a score from 0 to 100. Doesn't understand what it needs to be doing before it's going to come up with the implementation plan. So models sometimes are slow, but let's see. But in the meantime, I can show you just briefly how the dashboards in Busy looks like. But essentially, let's go back to Busy. So this is what your, I'll show you how analytics looks like, and as well as your model cabinet. So analytics, you can select by teammate. I can select one of my teammates and see how are they using tokens, how many Jira tickets they're closing with AI or like with our tool versus without our tool. I can see the last task, how much does it cost me in token and which stage this task gets stuck in. And at the end, once once the code is generated, I have a few choices. I can either push it into my GitHub repo, or I can say, take me to my IDE of choice, and I'll finish it from there. But let's say if I'm an engineering manager and I have 100 or 200 developers or 2,000 developers, I'm confident that my process across the team is the same as a foundational layer that we started with clarifying what it is we're trying to do, answering the questions about it, using smart routing so we save on tokens, and only then if they have a preference to take it to the IDE of choice, they can do so, right? So let me go back and see if... Anyway, live demos and models are slow.
Running the risk of a live demo.
Yeah. I was like, I could maybe show a video.
I was gonna ask how deep it goes. Like, so as an engineering manager, I have it templated and busy like coding patterns, right? Like we want the team to adhere to specific patterns, and it analyzes what the, you know what I mean, and matches to see if it like you have a template among teams.
So you have essentially what we did for the implementation plan. We analyzed what our AI native guys been doing for a long time, and they spend like 60% of their time preparing this complex prompts that tells them what to do, what not to do. Here's how everything's gonna affect my my front end, my back end, my API keys, right? And yeah, Alex, you wanna add something?
Yeah, I would like to switch your attention to another perspective.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about your project, so of course we do analyze repository. So when you saw this is like an alert, like it's labeled like a repo.
Yep.
So before this, we have grab this information by repo and create some rules. It can be like exported from Cursor or from another tools, like we also can take this. So also like when you're doing like and try to work with a task and do this implementation plan, you use these rules first of all. Then you go to the upper task to understand the whole context of the task. So we do like go to the repos, understand the rules about these MD files, read about everything about this repository. Then go to the parent tools. Then after this, how it works? There is like our algorithm which evaluate the task from the complexity and the size of the task. If the complexity of the task is what you already talked about haiku, if the complexity of the task is very high, so use opus. If the low one, use haiku. But then it's go to size the task. There is like a feature which already are in already is in Cloud Code, but we still like working on this to optimize it more, to split the task into the chunks and to work on it with the one context window. Because when we do this, so you can see that the price for the input tokens and output tokens is like a 5-10% more. It depends, and context window is 5 minutes for Anthropic, for example. So we try to do everything in one like a piece of code. So just to use prompt caching, just to not to waste like a lot of input.
So the scoring was basically done. So now like I got the score 85 over 100. And so I got implementation plan here right in my chat. So I could check it out as a developer, and I can just approve it. Something that we're building as well, that's new feature, is we built our own skills. So you can tell Busy if you're a technical person or not. So like if you're a technical person, it's gonna more act like the industry domain expertise, and like as a BA, and try to give you those kind of help and suggestions. But if you're non-technical, then it's going to try to help you more as an engineer, right? So, but in this case, it was perfect. It was 85 scores because I explained what I need to fix. But like, let's say in some cases, if I didn't give enough description, the score could be low. So let's say if it's below 75, it's never going to start just because AI never tells you no. But we serve here as a guardrail by saying first clarify it. Second step, keep the human in the loop that will review this implementation plan. Only then hit approve and send it to the coding model. So, but that's just kind of quick explanation how Busy work. But essentially what we're trying to build is like, how do you build with AI in a way that's measurable, managed, and proven? And we're trying to shift folks from white coding into building, having AI assistant software engineering that you can be proud of, and you can have less mistakes in your code, that you're not going to have to debug. We're trying to get you to the structure, building in a structured way, especially for the larger teams. So right now, we have many pilot customers. We just signed one big one with 2,000 developers. They tested it with three teams. We're proud to be a Houston startup. So if you guys, have any good introductions for larger companies that wants to test out Busy, we're happy to run like free pilots and get connected. But thank you all for listening and being here. And
give Oleg a big round of applause.
Thank you guys. I think I was like taking the 3 subject was kind of a lot, so I kind of was like all over the place. But
I think we had a good time, right?
That was all right.
So. Yeah. Oleg, thank you so much for leading the workshop. Guys, I think Oleg will be sharing the slides and that set of 3 skills that he brought up at the start of the repo. We'll be posting those in the Luma Blast at the end of the meeting. Also, I think we've got a couple of different recordings. Alex has got a little camera recording over there, and I think we were also recording the Google Meet. So we'll find a way of getting this up on the AITX YouTube channel so you guys can go back, recap, kind of get through. Now, we are basically done for the rest of the night. Couple of notes to close down. We do want to kind of get out of here early. I got to shut down the Skylar wireless space, and I can't leave until everyone else leaves. But before that, please hang out for a couple of minutes. We've got a ton of pizza. Please grab some more, take a box home. A couple of questions from the audience. We'll go for you first.
So my question was more so from an enterprise engineering perspective, when we're talking about
Yeah.
governance, is there a way, whether it's with Breezy or Claude, with the skills that you can kind of enforce certain skills for different departments? Let's say you have the engineering team for IAM, NetSec, or even, I don't know, our less technical folks like within GRC to say, okay, we've analyzed it, so these groups of people with these roles, these safeguards.
Like role-based access control, basically.
So
Yeah, is there a way you can do that, or is that another AI agent? you have
So
to
I would say you should, like, depends on the security guard, like, policies that you have at your company, right? But definitely I would look up this Nemo Claw first that NVIDIA is working on right now, because they pretty much already created it, like, and they're trying to prevent any kind of prompt injections and things like that. That's why they build that. I would be still careful to use Claude on the enterprise level, because you can have shadow AI and you don't know what your employees are feeding into it, and they could pretty much send some kind of data that's sensitive that you don't want to. So I would be really careful with it, right? So I would start by looking at the Nemo Claw and what was announced with that. On the personal, on the small use cases, definitely start using it. But I would check until Anthropic signs with you like a document where they're saying like nothing is gonna be stored, and you know, I would not do that, right? So like we're talking to one company that uses Anthropic for some other use cases, but they basically signed that, you know, they're not training on their models, because of course you can have a toggle off inside of your Claude, but do they really train or not? We don't know.
I think on the API they're supposed to.
Claude doesn't train on your output because they think it's garbage. I'm going to be honest. Like, they stated this a while back that the sycophancy problem in AI is largely because of training off of people's chat encounters with AI. Is that they found that the best way to get Claude to be smarter is to very well curate whose data gets in there, and they just don't use customer data at all.
So
Now they will look at it for
you
analytics.
should be so lucky that we train off your.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. No, they pay big money to pay people specifically to sit there and use Claude to generate data that they know will do really good jobs.
I would say too, real quick, just for the government side, if you know the history of how Anthropic got started, right? The CEO of Anthropic actually worked for OpenAI. He left because he didn't agree with their security policies and how they want to use AI. So it's not saying that Anthropic or Claude is going to be the most secure, but they do take that kind of into account more so than someone like.
I mean, they stood up to the U.S. government. Like,
Yeah, they almost got banned out of the U.S. because of that.
One thing you might consider is like a pledge option. You should look at agentskills.io, which is the industry standard, and have it import from Cursor to Claude. So if you couldn't open up the skills that he has because it wasn't in the standard portable format, what you can do is you can create a Git repo per harness that you're going to create for a set of skills, and control access to who has access to that repo itself.
Yeah.
So if you've got an HR group, they have access to the HR skills. And that's one way that you can kind of version all the skills.
There is like a, if you guys have like a role-based access control and you have a way of isolating files per user group, you can place your skills in those so that whatever AI you use, whether it be Cursor, Claude, OpenAI, it will only have access to that file system and that file system. So there are ways to deterministically make sure that AI doesn't even know that the skills are there.
You said it's open skills?
Yeah, agent skills.
Agentskills.io. It's like 5 pages. Everybody should read it. If you actually want to get paid, like that's you need to read it.
It also depends a lot on how you're using AI, right? Like, how are people actually accessing these skills and using them? Are they using Claude Code CLI? Are they using ChatGPT.com? Like, that makes a big difference.
That's why I think on-prem is going to come back, you know, like a lot of companies will try to post their model.
So I had a meeting with HPE about a year and a half ago with their full C-suite, and they were telling us that like 5 years ago, 80% of everyone was moving off of prem to cloud. And in the last year and a half, 80% of people are moving from cloud back to on-prem. Yeah.
I got a couple teams already do that.
It's a huge move. Like, they can't even manufacture the servers fast enough to keep up with the demand.
Can you blur my contact information?
Let's do that. On live stream,
Everybody knows Gary from Free Legion. You're in my house. You're in my CRM, man.
I know,
So you'll get automated email too.
She has a question. Quick question.
Yes.
For Busy in particular, for the, I know you said you can generally focused on the startups, but for the
No,
enterprise.
large customers as well.
Oh, good. Is there like a list or that of softwares that you guys do work within? I don't know, I know some of the bigger platforms that we're using that, we would love to kind of get an idea on how AI would be able to be implemented, but, I mean, we're pretty mid-sized, so, like 150.
So the question is like what tools we're using internally?
Yeah.
So we use Cloud actually quite a bit now. So like people are shifting from we first bought like Windsurf for everybody, then we shifted to some folks shifted to like Cursor.
Okay.
And now we're using Cloud as well. But it kind of depends on your.
Does it matter, like, if we're using, say, like, Copilot and things like that? Does it
Yeah,
matter?
I think Copilot now has ability to access agent skills. So if
Okay.
you have that go-to-market agent skill,
Yeah.
you can actually try it out in your Copilot.
Perfect.
You should be able to.
Yeah, it's pretty much just like a zip file with MD rules
Mhm.
that tells you like first it's gonna the file that I shared that's GTM engineer, it's gonna interview you about your business first.
Okay.
And then it's gonna give you like a plan, and then you can reuse the GTM engineer once you're building your skills.
Okay.
So that's kind of the idea, but.
All right, guys. Thank you everyone
Thank you,
for
guys.
coming and being
Really
patient
appreciate
with
it.
us. Please grab some pizza on your way out. Also, I feel like unofficially we're going to turn Antidote into the AI Texas post meetup space. So if y'all want to continue the conversation, please. It's literally like a 2-minute walk down the street.
What's under?
Thank
what
you
does
all
your
for
shirt
coming.
say? Under your
Hope to see you at the
tab.
next one.
Go one more. A little mystery.
Yeah. So my LinkedIn on
Brandon, that's